Welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. It has been a pretty crazy 2 weeks for us since we put up the Donnie Vincent show.
Yeah, I think there's probably quite a lot of new listeners. So welcome to everybody who's new, and thank you to everyone who has always listened.
Yeah, welcome. I think we have now got a huge amount of American listeners.
Yeah, which is great.
Well, we did have some before. Colin, you'll always be the first, so don't worry.
Yes. Now, we are not going to delay in getting to the first item because here in the UK, and particularly in Scotland, we will be introducing some new airgun licensing laws imminently. And it is very important for everybody concerned, if you own an airgun of any description, that you are aware of these. So we're going to cut straight to Alex, who is the director of SACS, who, of course, are the sponsor of this podcast, the Scottish Association for Country Sports, and we're going to hear what he has to say about the airgun licensing and everything that you need to know. So listen up.
It's a really concise way to learn what you need to know, so listen up.
And then we've got more stuff for you after this.
We're at the Northern Shooting Show.
Yeah, so listen up for now, and then you'll hear from us again just shortly. Morning, Alex. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've had a lot of requests talking about air guns and people not very sure what's happening in Scotland, what they need to do. You're going to provide us with a summary of what everyone needs to know, because I know you've been working on this a huge amount over the last few months, and particularly in the last couple of weeks. If we just start off with, I'm an air gun owner, I've got air guns in my house, I'm a law-abiding citizen, what do I need to do? What do I need to do next?
Okay, first of all, there's the current surrender scheme in place, and we're hopeful that most people won't use that and actually apply for an air weapon certificate, as they call it, regardless. Basically, airgun owners who do not intend to surrender their airguns and do not hold a firearm or shotgun certificate will be required by law to apply for an airgun certificate prior to the 31st of December 2016. However, in reality, you'll need to apply before the 1st of November this year, and I'll explain why as a wee quirk in the legislation that we've spotted. Basically, if by the 1st of January 2017 a decision to grant you an airgun certificate has not been determined and you submitted your application before the 1st of November, you're still permitted to possess your airguns until the final decision. You're not allowed to use them or to buy more, but you're allowed to possess. If you submitted after the 1st of November, you might be asked to store them off-site with a friend or an RFD. Okay. So that would be more hassle. From the 1st of January 2017, most airgunners will now have to have an airgun certificate to possess, use, purchase or acquire an airgun in Scotland. They call it an air weapon certificate in legislation, but we all know that airguns aren't weapons. For over 18s, an airgun certificate will cost £72. Having a firearm or shotgun certificate in Scotland or elsewhere in GB will allow you to possess and use airguns in Scotland until your next renewal. At that point, you'll then have to apply for an air weapon certificate, or an airgun certificate as we call it, at a much reduced fee of just £5 as opposed to normal £72. So, and also for simplicity, your certificate, if it's coming in line with your FEC and or SGC, will be given the same renewal date to make it tri-terminus or co-terminus, whichever is relevant.
Okay.
Now, this is important. Though an FEC or SGC will cover you in the short term to possess and use airguns until your next renewal, it doesn't cover you to buy or acquire another airgun, in which case you will then need to apply for an airgun certificate anyway. There are a few exemptions to airgun licensing where you won't need a certificate, for example, borrowing under supervision or borrowing airguns as an approved club. But most people from the 31st of December will need to have an airgun certificate.
Okay. No, I think that if anybody didn't quite catch that, they can rewind and listen to exactly what you said again.
That's the beauty of it.
I believe that you're going to provide a question and answer document available on SACS Facebook, and we'll work out a way to let people download that as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically a distillation of the various bits of information we've been putting out through Scottish Government, the police, ourselves, bring it all together into one fairly easily readable document that informs people as best we can in terms of what's happening and when it's happening.
That's perfect.
There's quite a lot of confusion out there, and it's important that we get the information across in a really lucid, clear way.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll at the end of this, we will let everybody know exactly how they can get hold of this information.
That's great.
So on to the next thing. We are right in the middle of what they're calling the Airgun amnesty right now. I know that there's a lot of guns being handed in already.
You see the pictures on Facebook already of the police stations with a huge amount of air guns handed in.
Now, I mean, what's your view on the amnesty right now? I know my brother and I have discussed it, and our personal view is that, amongst other things, it's far too short.
Yes, far too short. It's at the wrong time, and it's been done the wrong way. And we actually feel it's been done for political expedience rather than practical effect. So we don't support the current airgun amnesty, as the press are calling it. One, because it's not an amnesty. If you are lawfully in possession of an airgun right now, it can't possibly be an amnesty. So it's simply a surrender scheme. So the press has got this well wrong. It's a very short scheme, and it comes to an end on the 12th of June. So 23rd of May, until the 12th of June. The applications for air gun certificates will start from the 1st of July. So that we feel this is simply a publicity gimmick by Scottish Government. The truth is that over the next few months, airgun owners need to decide whether they want to apply for a certificate or dispose of the guns somehow. We strongly recommend that everyone who possibly can applies for an airgun certificate. However, if there's genuine need to dispose of an airgun, then you can take it to a gun shop or an airgun club rather than just hand it in to the police to be photographed for PR reasons and then cut up as scrap. Remember, there's no compensation as this is not a ban, it's licensing. So our advice is either keep it and get it licensed, certificated, or you can hand it into an airgun club or an RFD and make something out of it. From the 1st of January 2017, the airgun legislation will come into full force. After that date, any airgun owners without a certificate or permit could face a fine or imprisonment of potentially up to 2 years. It's really quite serious stuff.
Yeah, so it's very important that people do pay attention to what's going on right now. And like you said, I mean, I'd much rather people decide that they don't want to go down the route of licensing air guns that they have, and I would encourage people to do that, as indeed you have, is hand it to somebody who's going to make use of it, who is going to license it. Airgun Club is a great place to put it if you don't want it.
I feel sorry for probably the huge amount of parents or grandparents that have air rifles maybe tucked away in their loft that they don't know about. In 2 years' time, they're digging it out and they've got an air rifle in their loft. There must be loads out there.
Well, we feel strongly that the bulk of the population hasn't got a clue, one, that airgun licensing is coming in, and secondly, what to do about it. And I know of many people that have air guns in sheds. We all know them in attics or whatever, some with the springs broken, some that have been forgotten about. But if that air gun can fire a pellet, even if the spring is broken, if it can fire a pellet and it's in working order, from the 1st of January next year, it will be an offence to possess it without an airgun certificate. The Scottish Government's current PR scheme is pretty meaningless. There's not much investment in it. We've got adverts in the back of buses, adverts in the radio, and adverts in the news. But the message just isn't getting out to people. And we're getting a lot of phone calls from even shooters who are saying, we've got airgun licensing, I've been scrapped. What's this about it coming in? In the last 48 hours, we put up a big post on Facebook about the fees and other bits of information. From that post itself, we've generated over 240 specific comments and inquiries. We've been working flat out over the last 48 hours to keep people, not just SACS members, keeping people informed of what's happening and how they can make sure that they stay lawful. So that we feel that we're doing more right now than the Scottish Government. That's just not fair.
And your, I mean, it was an incredibly detailed post that you put up on social media. It's been shared far and wide by many people and many organisations, I believe.
Yes, it's been a real vote of confidence in SACS that other organisations have put their work onto their website. Yes, it's
well,
nice
we're going to do the same.
Are doing that.
We're going to steal it from you and put it on our website.
With permission.
With permission.
No, you're very welcome. It's nice to see that. We have a very strong legal firearms background at SACS, and it's something we take great pride in.
No,
So
absolutely.
if other organisations want to make use of that, then by all means, give us a shout, and we're happy for that to happen.
Yeah, all for the greater good, of course.
Yep, absolutely that.
So just going on to, in terms of what is actually covered, there is maybe a little bit of a grey area between what is an air gun. So what is the qualification of an air gun or air weapon, as they're calling them, that will require you to get it licensed?
Okay, so this is the detail bit. Get your pens at the ready. The 2005 Airgun Licensing Act, we'll call it for that in short, it covers all air guns with a muzzle energy exceeding 1 euro. That's basically about 3/4 of 1 foot-pound. It doesn't cover those currently required to be held in the firearm certificate, i.e. air pistols above 6 foot-pounds and air rifles above 12 foot-pounds muzzle energy. The new law also covers airgun component parts, things like barrels or cylinders and that kind of thing. It also covers airgun sound moderators, so they will come under this part of the actual act as well. Our view is that's daft. This is daft as in being an FACs. I'm sure you share the same view as myself. In my view, sound moderators are less dangerous than a brick in your hand. But airsoft and low-energy plastic BB firing guns are not classified as air weapons under the new law. And also, really importantly, airgun pellets aren't subject to controls. So you can still buy them off eBay or buy them over the shop counter without a certificate. That's not a drama, and that's something that we feel is actually quite sensible.
Yeah.
One issue there that it reflects on another law that's live is the Violent Crime Reduction Act 2006, and that reflects on realistic imitation airsoft guns with a muzzle energy below 2.5 euros or 1.3 euros for fully automatic guns. Now, if you don't use airsoft guns, you don't need to worry about that or understand the figures, but if you do, the chances are that you're aware of this already. So these realistic imitation airsoft guns aren't technically air weapons, and the use is already controlled by the VCR 2006 Act. They don't come under airgun licensing. Also, crossbows and Darrell listening, spearfishing guns are not covered by the new law. So you're okay to go fishing.
You had me worried there for a second.
We've actually had a couple of questions about that, whether crossbows were going to be brought into this, but no, thankfully they're not.
It was time to leave the country if the spear gun had to be licensed.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the other big one here is paintball guns. There's a couple of areas of difficulty here. If paintball guns are being used at an approved paintball venue or a formal paintball venue, then that's fine. If they are used for other purposes, then they may need a certificate, and that's a grey area that's yet to be finalised. We'll get more information on that, and anybody doing paintball, you probably have your own professional bodies that will represent you there anyway. But as and when we come across more information, we'll pass it on.
Okay.
One other small thing is the many people out there that collect antique air guns and don't actually fire them. If they can still fire an air pellets beyond the energy threshold, then they will require a certificate, even just for collection. So that's something to be aware of.
Okay, I was quite surprised about the possible grey area with paintball guns, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what comes of that.
Yeah, I mean they're highly dangerous. You can walk into the post office anywhere.
Well, I
think we're getting into the realms of nonsense here. But the fact is that the government bringing this legislation forward, as flawed as we believe it is, has had to put down some thresholds of energy, etc. Mm-hmm. And we agree with the principle, but of these thresholds, you have to have that. But we do not agree with the principle of airgun licensing. The whole thing's nonsensical.
Mm. So in terms of a certificate, you now have one because you've applied. How long does it last? Is it comparable to owning a shotgun and firearm certificate, as a lot of our listeners probably do?
Okay. For applications received between the 1st of July this year and the 31st of December this year, the certificates will last between 18 and 26 months. The reason for this is because of cyclical licensing workloads. And a formula was created that allowed the police to figure out how they can bring in a large number of airgun certificate holders without adding an extra burden onto licensing resources. And we support that. It's quite a sensible measure, actually. Probably a good idea even to bring it into FAC and SGC licensing. For the shorter certificates, the fees for them will be proportionately less. Okay. And that's obviously a fair thing. Certificates issued from applications received after the 31st of December will then last for the full 5 years. And then certificates issued along with firearm certificate or shotgun certificate renewals after 31st December will be coterminous with the FEC or SGC certificates. Now, if you're aged between 14 and 18, your first air gun certificate will have a special non-buying or gifting condition. This will end when you're 18. So if you are 16 and you apply for your first air gun certificate, by the age of 18, 2 years later, that will get cancelled. You have to apply for a fresh one, which is unrestricted. The fresh one will then allow you to buy or acquire air guns that the first one didn't. Okay. Also, from the age of 18, you can buy airgun pellets, which you currently can't do in current law. You can be gifted them for certain exemptions purposes, but not actually buy them. So if you get an air gun certificate at 17, it will cost proportionately less than one that you get at 18, and that's a good thing. So again, that's fair. It brings people into full certification at 18 in terms of buying air guns and pellets, and we think that's a sensible thing in a rather nonsensical law overall. Mm-hmm. So there's a positive there and a rather big negative.
Okay. So if you're at that end of the age spectrum, you've got a couple of things to think about and consider, and I'm sure supportive parents will help you get through that as well. Application for a certificate. Most people know how you go about that. You giving the police a call, they'll send you the applications, or you can download them online from your local firearms department website. How do you go about it with an airgun? Is it going to be the same sort of thing?
Okay, so they actually call them air weapon certificates in the legislation, but we all know that airguns aren't weapons, but when we use the old term airgun wherever we possibly can. Police Scotland will be running airgun licensing, and applications will go live from the 1st of July this year. Certificates and permits, however, will not be valid until the 1st of January 2017. So you can apply for them from the 1st of July, download a form, fill it out as best you honestly can, send it into the police with a fee. They do the processing behind the scenes, but your eventual certificate that you receive in the post won't actually be valid until the 1st of January 2017. We don't yet know how long the actual application process will take, or how many applications they'll get. I mean, they could have 10,000 in 2 weeks, or maybe 1,000. We have no idea yet. But that's something that we'll inform members of as we become more aware of it. Police Scotland say that they'll manage with a surge in numbers. I don't know. I'm not one to judge. We'll just have to wait and see.
Okay, so yeah, you will put up the links, I'm sure, when you know where they can be downloaded, and certainly we'll do the same so that people know where they can get the applications for certificates.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Just to finish up, Alex, we've given everybody the important information that they need to know to make sure that they stay law-abiding with regard to the new legislation. But can you just summarize by telling us why this was actually brought in the first place? We're going to go on to touch on this with a couple of people in the podcast that follows, where you were in attendance with a number of people at the Northern Shooting Show. But if you could just sort of go over that right now, so people understand why on earth we're in this position that we're in right this minute.
Okay, sure. The Scottish Government brought forward air weapons and licensing to help us better protect Scottish communities and make them safer. They felt, we believe genuinely, that there was a public safety element to the public ownership and use of airguns in Scotland. Now, the statistics don't actually support that, so they keep banding around 182 airgun offences in the last 12 months, in the last statistical year. But actually, in terms of all offences in Scotland, it's a drop in the ocean. It's a tiny, tiny amount. The Scottish Government says that airgun licensing follows the principles of existing firearms licensing and allows a fit person to obtain a license to own, possess and use an airgun. Our response to that is, quite honestly, is total bollocks. Airgun licensing is disproportionate in regard to the tiny amount of airgun crime and totally unfair to the vast majority of lawful airgun owners. It's an absurd law that's highly unlikely to deter criminals. On statistics, in 2013 to 14, there were 65,661 recorded violent crimes in Scotland, but of them, just 34 were committed with an airgun. That's 0.05% or a 20th of 1%. What's next? Licensing hammers and screwdrivers?
Yeah.
The challenge is that the laws here is coming into force on the 1st of January 2017, and SACS and other organisations are doing their level best to inform members to make sure that they're aware of the new law and the penalties of not following it. Behind the scenes, we'll keep fighting the legislation, but from the 1st of January 2017, members will have to obey it.
Mm. Yeah.
Just out of interest, you might actually already have this written down, and I know that we did talk about it at the Northern Shooting Show. Is there any more information about people travelling from other parts of the UK or other parts of the world bringing an airgun into Scotland?
Yes, there is. I mean, visitors that have a valid firearm or shotgun certificate, even if that firearm or shotgun certificate's in England or Wales, they're not Northern Ireland, I'll come back to that. They're covered to possess and use airguns in Scotland up to their FAC or STC renewal.
Okay.
So say you come from Doncaster and you got a shotgun certificate that expires in 2017, but you shoot airguns in Scotland for rabbits or competitions, you would then be covered up until your STC renewal to use and possess your airguns in Scotland. However, you're not covered to buy or acquire any more in Scotland. If you wish to do so, you'd have to apply for a visitor permit. If you don't have an STC or an FAC, you'll have to apply for a visitor permit, something akin to the actual airgun certificate, which allows you to possess airguns in Scotland, and importantly also to buy them in Scotland. And it's about £20. So that is £20 to have a visitor permit. Our advice is, if you come to Scotland often, if you're crossing the border and doing air gunning bits and bobs here, then get yourself an air gun certificate as well. The air gun certificate isn't just for Scottish residents, it's also for anybody that may be affected by this legislation. So you might find it actually cheaper to get your own air gun certificate in any case.
Okay.
If you come from Northern Ireland, you won't be covered by the FAC that you have there, and you'll have to apply for a visitor permit regardless.
Okay, no, that's really important, I think. Yeah.
I think that clears things up a little bit.
Alex, just one final question from me, and I'm not sure whether this has been fleshed out yet, is going to be the requirement for security storage of air guns.
Right. Okay. There is a rather detailed document that's been around for quite a while, done by the Home Office and a number of shooting organisations, including BASC and BSSC, etc., and the NRA. It's very, very good. If you stick into Google 3 words, air weapons safety, it's the first thing that comes up.
Great.
It's a PDF leaflet with good information on current airgun laws that doesn't include the Scottish airgun laws, but especially good information on security requirements and your responsibility. In terms of, do you need a gun cabinet for airguns in Scotland from the 1st of January next year? No, you don't. A locked room or cupboard or a trigger lock or security cable would suffice in most circumstances. If you've got a gun cabinet and you've got kids in the house, then it's common sense to pop them in the cabinet or in a strong room if you possibly can. The leaflet from the Home Office actually also describes the airgun security standard for the new Scottish law, which is the one that they reflect to. And in any case, there's also an offence right now, even before the Scottish law, to allow an under 18 to be in possession of an airgun, with certain exemptions that exist. So, common sense applies. If you use your head, you'll keep your airgun certificate. And if you want to keep your airgun out of the hands of minors and people that shouldn't have them, in that case, the chances are you'll be fulfilling your security requirement anyway.
Okay, so nothing in terms of security requirements has really changed with regard to the new legislation coming in.
Hasn't really changed. It's common sense applies. If you've got minors in the house and they might have access to air guns, simply lock them away. And putting them on top of a wardrobe would not be considered, in our view, as genuinely secure. That's still relatively accessible by a minor. If you lock it in a room specifically for the purpose, or a gun cabinet, or a security cable, or a trigger lock, then that in our view would be sufficient.
Perfect. Alex, thank you very much for your time
Thank
this
you
morning.
very much.